Welcome back to Social Science class. History, chapter number 2, The Russian Revolution, part 4. Let us recapitulate the topic of the previous class. We have completed the topic in the previous class, the Civil War. After the revolution created in October, the effect of that revolution was the Civil War. When the Bolsheviks ordered land redistribution, the Russian army began to break up, and the non-Bolshevik socialist liberals and supporters of autocracy condemned the Bolshevik uprising, and their leaders organized troops which were supported by French, American, British, and Japanese. The Bolsheviks were referred as the Reds, the socialist revolutionaries were referred as Greens, and the pro-Tsarist supporters of Tsar were referred as Whites. All these forces fought a war with the Bolsheviks because they were worried at the growth of the socialism in Russia. Supporters of the private property, they took harsh steps against the peasants who had seized land, which led loss of popular support for the non-Bolsheviks. Bolsheviks controlled most of the former Russian Empire due to the cooperation of the non-Russian nationalist and Muslim jihadists. But in Khiva, in Central Asia, Bolsheviks colonists brutally massacred local nationalists, due to which the people were confused about the Bolsheviks' representation. Partially to remedy this situation, most of the non-Russian nationalities were given political autonomy in the Soviet Union. Here you can see the effect of civil war. Let us start with a new topic, making a socialist society. During the Civil War, the Bolsheviks kept industries and banks nationalized. They permitted peasants to cultivate the land that had been socialized. Bolsheviks used confiscated land to demonstrate what the collective work could be. Due to this, the process of centralized planning was introduced, according to which the 5-year plans were set by the government. Under these 5-year plans, the government fixed all prices to promote industrial growth during the first 2 phases of the 5-year plan. The first phase of the 5-year plan was between 1927 to 1932, and the second phase was 1933 to 1938. This centralized planning led to economic growth as industrial production increased by 100% in case of oil, coal, and steel. This rapid construction and industrialization gave rise to poor working conditions, as the capitalists were keen in earning more and more profit, so the exploitation of workers also started. We can see the condition of the workers with one of the example. Workers lived hard lives as in living quarters, and the situation was so worst that in the winter time the temperature below 40 degree, in that temperature people had to climb down from the 4th floor of their living quarters and dash across the street just to go for the toilets. An extended schooling system also developed after the revolution. These systems you can explain as an positive effects of the revolution. An extensive schooling system developed. Arrangements were made for the factory workers and peasants to enter universities. Creches were established in the factories for the children of the women workers. Cheap public health care was provided, and the model living quarters were set up for the workers. By the time Lenin died in January 1924, he was firmly in control of the new communist state. After his death, power passed into the hands of one of his party official named as Joseph Stalin. By 1927-28, the towns in Soviet Russia were facing shortage of food supplies. The main cause behind this shortage was the fixation of grain prices by the government. The peasants refused to sell their grains to the government at the fixed price. In 1928, government officials toured the grain producing areas for enforced grain collection. They raided kulaks. Kulaks were the name for the well to do peasants, that means the rich peasants. So, in 1928, government officials toured the grain producing areas for enforced grain collection, and these members of the party, they raided kulaks, the rich peasants. But the shortage still continued. So to solve this problem, decision was taken to collectivize farms and to eliminate kulaks. For this, from 1929, the government forced all peasants to cultivate farms together in a collective farms. Those collective farms were named as kolkhoj. Peasants worked on land and the production was shared. Though there was resistance from the big landlords and many other farmers, but the government stuck to its decisions. Anyone who criticized the government was put behind the bars. In spite of collectivization, production did not increase immediately. And the bad harvest of 1930-33 led to one of the most devastating famines in the Soviet history. Many within the party itself criticized the confusion in industrial production under the planned economy and the consequences of collectivization. Stalin and his sympathizers charged these critics with conspiracy against socialism, due to which by 1939 over 2 million were in prisons or labor camps. A large number of the peasants were forced to make false confessions under torture and were executed, although many of them among were trained professionals. Here the map shows 1936 Soviet Union at the time of Joseph Stalin. Due to all these revolutions, due to both the revolutions in Russia and the policies introduced by Joseph Stalin, the collectivization, how the image of Russia has become in the world. So, the global influence of the Russian Revolution and the USSR. However, existing socialist parties in Europe did not wholly approve the Bolshevik power. Then, too, in many countries, communist parties were formed, like the Communist Party of the Great Britain. Many non-Russians from outside the USSR participated in the Conference of the People of the East, and the Bolsheviks founded Comintern. Comintern means an international union of pro-Bolshevik socialist party. By the time of outbreak of the Second World War in the year 1939, the USSR had given socialism a global face and world statuary. Yet, by the 1950s, it was acknowledged within the countries that the style of government in the USSR was not in keeping with the ideals of the Russian Revolution. And all was not well in Soviet Union. As a backward country had become a great power. Its industries and agriculture had developed, but it had denied the essential freedom to its citizens and introduced repressive policies. By the end of the 20th century, the international reputation of the USSR as a socialist country had declined a lot, and the ideas of the socialism were rethought in a variety of different ways. So here we end up with the chapter The Russian Revolution, the second chapter of the history. Thank you.